What is up, everyone, and welcome back to season 2 for the Animous tutorials. Today, we're going to be talking about masking your parts. Now, I decided to do this tutorial because I have a lot of people that have messaged me before asking me, hey, do you have any tips and tricks, maybe how I can go ahead and mask my parts depending on what I'm trying to paint, maybe if I want to paint more details or even try to color separate your kit as much as you can, right? So today I'm just going to give you guys a little bit of a crash course on the stuff that, I do whenever I'm masking my kits to separate or color separate some parts, right? So it's very important that whenever you are doing this process, you make sure that that base coat that you decided to use on your kit is already dry. And I mean 100% dry. It's not just enough that it cures. It's, some people say that it is. However, I don't trust it enough. So I always make sure that everything is already good and dry. Now, with that being said, I usually try to wait, even if it's not necessary. I usually leave my parts overnight, maybe give them like 12, 16 hours of drying. The temperature here is, it fluctuates a lot. So it just depends on the area where you live. If you live in an area where there's high humidity, you might want to consider getting maybe a dehydrator or something of the sort. So maybe you can toast the parts up a little bit so it dries a little bit faster without having any issues with your paint and the layers. So first thing you're going to need, of course, is going to be the parts. Now here I have one of the parts from the Gundam aerial that we are currently customizing. And, I decided to just, since I have to do this anyway, I decided to go ahead and try to give you guys a little bit of a rundown of what I do when I mask my parts, right? The next thing that you're going to need is going to be a hobby knife. So you can use any type of hobby knife that you want, or if you want to use a razor, you can. It's just depend, it's just preference at that point. What's most comfortable for you to be able to cut your masking tape, right? Myself, I use the Tamiya masking tape. I believe this is an 18 millimeter. Yes, that is correct. So this is an 18 millimeter one. I bought the one with the wheel. It's a little bit more convenient, and then I just refill it whenever I need some more. Um, and that's pretty much it. For details, I guess, I use a toothpick. Now, you guys know that I'm a fan of using toothpicks on my builds, whether it's to put decals on or to maybe, move the decals around or maybe press parts down or whatever the reason may be. I like using my toothpick there. So very big fan of using a toothpick. A lot of people might think it's funny or whatever, but this has saved my life many times that I can many times that I can think of there. So especially when it comes to building, you use like random stuff. Some people use tweezers too. I try not to use tweezers because sometimes if you press too hard, you might actually damage the paint or the base coat that you just sprayed on. So try to stay away from that. Uh, Now, with that being said, the gloves, I use gloves. You guys all know that I use gloves, and it's not going to change. Sometimes I don't use gloves, but it has to be at a point where maybe my hands are super dry, and I don't have to worry about that, right? Um, so let's go ahead and get started. Another tip that I want to tell you guys is that when masking parts, it's really important for you to be able to have patience in what you're doing. Doesn't matter if you're just masking a small piece or a small area, or if you're trying to really color separate your kit as much as possible. It's really important that you guys have patience. Everybody has patience whenever you guys are doing it. Biggest reason why is because you don't want to damage that base coat that's already there. So this right here, I use an AOK Silver Oaks White 01. So this is usually my base coat whenever whenever I paint a kit, and then I go from there. So it's very important that you take care of your parts as much as you can while you're masking your parts. Usually because you don't want to have to repaint the whole thing. This has already been primed, or the base coat already has a couple of layers. So I definitely want to make sure that I maintain that. So now the first thing that I do, at least, is that I go ahead and grab a long piece of the tape. It's going to stick to your gloves. I wouldn't worry too much about it. And then I make sure that my cutting mat is clean. There's no debris or dust in there, because then it'll stick to your part whenever you're trying to mask it. I just lay it down right there. It's a little crooked there. Let me go ahead and fix that. All right. So the next thing that you're going to do is that you're going to go ahead and grab your hobby knife, right? So we're going to try and do a small area there. So um well, Animus, what happens if you got a big area to cover? Well, don't be greedy with your masking tape. I'm gonna say this right now. If you're greedy with your masking tape and you don't want to use it a whole lot, or you just don't want to waste it, well, that's what it's for. You know, if you get greedy and you're like, well, I'll just cover like a small area here, the overspray will damage your part. Now, I don't have an example here for you, but when I started painting, I remember that I was very greedy with my tape, saying like, "Well, you know what? I don't need that many layers of tape. It doesn't need to be covered that much." I was terribly wrong. You know, the overspray will find a way to get into any creases or anything that you might have. So just make sure that you go ahead and place that tape over the pieces and cover it. Have that coverage there, just in case. So we're just gonna go ahead and cut off a big part. Use my tweezers to get it out and start covering the part little by little. All right. So as you can see here, this one is a little bit unusable, so we'll go ahead and cut that a little bit more. All right. Now, Animus, why are you doing it like this? Why are you just cutting layers instead of just cutting a big piece and then placing it on and then cutting the rest of it? Well, the biggest thing is that some of these panel lines that are already scribed on the kit are not as deep as they should be. So even if I did cover the whole piece, it might run. So as a matter of fact, I can go ahead and give you an example right now. All right, we'll go ahead and set these to the side. Got a big piece there. Oh, perfect. Now there are some advantages of just covering the whole piece and then doing that. Main reason being that you could just, you know, you could save tape, I guess, save some masking tape, I guess. Then all I'd have to do would be cover the top part of it, right? So biggest thing is that you need to find where the seam line is or the panel line is, right? So we'll go ahead and cover that. And that's when the toothpick comes in. So the toothpick itself, you're just gonna go ahead and run it through the line. As I was mentioning before, these lines are not that deep, so you want to make sure that you don't mess that up. Then you're gonna gently, let's see if I can get some. All right. All you really need to do is mark it just a little bit, just enough, so you can go ahead and run the blade through it. Now, when running the blade, you need to make sure that you're super gentle. Because if you're not, you're just gonna scratch your paint off. All right. So hopefully I can make a mistake here so I can show you guys what not to do. All right. So it seems that my blade is a little bit dull. There we go. Perfect. So there we go. So as you can see with this one, that's what happens when you do cover the whole thing, right? So you'll cover the whole thing, you'll outline it with your toothpick, and then you'll run your blade through it. This is not my preferred method, being as you might be able to make some mistakes while doing so. Maybe the tape won't cover it completely, or there's a lot of things that can go wrong when using this method. So I usually try to steer clear from it. I prefer to use the small coverage area method, which is you'll try to cover the areas as much as you can, and then go from there, right? So we're gonna go ahead and go do the second side. All right. See if we can run our blade through it. All right. So the biggest thing with masking is that you have to make sure that you don't get any debris or any residual paper from the tape itself that's just stuck in the seams, like what just happened here. Um, so that's the most important thing. You have to make sure that everything is always clean at all times, and you can go ahead and paint. So this is an example on how to mask your parts, right? And it won't always be perfect. You just have to make sure that you line it up as best as you can. Most of the corrections with these in regards to the panel line, if it's cut like into the panel line a little bit over, will be fixed once you panel line the kit. So don't be too scared to do so. All right. So, and that is it for today's video. If you like my content, please make sure to like and subscribe, and I will catch you all later for the next tutorial here in Animous Works.